Hello and welcome to Geopolitics and International Relations Vlog. And today I have joined by a very senior professor from Tbilisi, Georgia, Dr. Nika Chitadze. He is the professor at the International Black Sea University, and he is also director for the Center for International Studies, Tbilisi. So Georgia has been into the international headlines for the last couple of weeks. We saw that there were mega protests in Tbilisi. Like in the history of Georgia, these are some sort of the very big protest. And the reason behind these protests are the one of the most controversial law that is named as a foreign agent bill. So against this law, millions of Georgians has been come out into the streets, and they are demanding the suspension of this bill. So let's talk more with Dr. Nika Chitadze that what is this foreign agent bill and why we saw that there is a mega and millions of people are on the street in Tbilisi.
First of all, let me greet you, and with the permission of you and audience, I will answer on this question. It should be pointed out that this bill again was presented by the ruling incumbent party of Georgian Dream, on April 3 of this year. Again, before 1 year ago, it was presented again, but after this bill was abolished. But again, it was presented a bill on foreign agents. Yes, the full name of the bill is, let's say here, the bill on the transparency of foreign influence. Before it was mentioned about the agent, but today it's called as a transparency of foreign influence. And what does it mean? That those organizations in Georgia, I mean non-commercial organizations, yes, non-commercial, non-profit organizations. First of all, yes, representative of civil society, non-governmental organization, who has income which prevails 20% of the income from the foreign sources, yes, foreign funds. Is obliged, this concrete organization is obliged to present to be registered as a let's say here foreign influence, by this way, player, yes, or organization, and to present at the end of the fiscal year is a financial declaration. Okay, but of course, it's Georgia Dream wanted to say that we require only from the NGOs just by this way declaration, and just that our society to be informed from where by this way there are sources and funds that they are coming for the funding of these concrete non-governmental organizations. But the problem is that important major part of significant part of the Georgian society, it considers it as a pressure to the civil society, pressure, because, for example, they are called as a let's say, foreign agent, yes, or an organization with a foreign influence. Yeah, what does it mean, a foreign influence? It means by this way that this concrete organization, it's spy and it works for some foreign country, but not in favor of Georgia, but in favor of some foreign forces. Yes, foreign forces can be state or non-state actors. This is a problem, by this way, that and it was considered by the important part of society here as a pressure on the freedom of speech, as a pressure on the democracy in general, by this way, yes, because this non-governmental sector is a sector which is not under the control of Georgian oligarch Bidzina Ivanishvili. He cannot control. He controls, of course, the state agencies and some private, even private sector, by this way, yes, partly. I mean, here some tenders with the relations between the government and the private companies. But with regard to the non-governmental sector, he wants, by this way, to make the pressure, because many of those non-governmental organizations, they criticize the government for some corruption deals, for example, yes, for some illegal activities. And it's not acceptable for the Georgian dream. And they want, by this way, by the adoption of such a law, to implement the pressure. And pressure before the elections. As you know, that Georgia will have the election on October 26th of this year. Georgia will have the parliamentary elections, and Georgian Dream is afraid to lose the power if they lose parliamentary elections, because their rate is declining. And accordingly, by this way, before the elections, they want somehow to make pressure on those organizations which can criticize Georgian Dream, for example, for any attempt of falsification of elections, etc., etc., etc. Because of this, yes, here there are demonstrations, and yesterday was also demonstration. Tomorrow it is planned the demonstration. Personally, me, I'm going to go there to join the demonstrators, but not as a speaker, just as a participant.
Okay, so Russia is very near Georgia, and we saw that the Russia and the Georgia, because I think that Russia says, I think that it is some sort of the like the major concerns that is that the showed by the Russia, because Georgia is expected and is in the hope to get the membership of the European Union. So if we put it in that context, so how you see like that the European Union and the Russia, maybe it's going to be some sort of the in another direction in future, or the things will be under control?
Yes, of course, Georgia's main foreign, according to the Constitution of Georgia, particularly Article 78 of the Constitution of Georgia, main foreign policy and national security priority of Georgia is integration to the European and Euro-Atlantic structures, with the main purpose to join the NATO, according to NATO and the European Union. From the other side, of course, Russia tries to keep its sphere of influence over the post-Soviet space, including Georgia, because, as you know, Georgia has very important strategic location, because Georgia is located, it's a small country, but at the same time, it is located on the crossroad between Europe and Asia in the Black Sea region, as you know. And accordingly, by this way, it is going on the geopolitical struggle. And the European Union, of course, requires from Georgia to be democratic. If Georgia wants to join NATO and EU, in this case, of course, Georgia to be democratic, and by this way, ideologically can approach to European institutions. But for Russia, it's more authoritarian regime, and for Russia, it's acceptable if Georgia is more authoritarian. In this case, of course, Georgia will be more closer to Russia than to European Union. And Georgian society here is agitated that if it is going on, and there are some pro-Russian forces in Georgia, and the Georgian Dream itself as a leading party is blamed to be the pro-Russian, despite the fact that Russia, occupied 20% of the territory of Georgia, and wants by this way to increase its influence by the using of different kind of soft power and hard power methods. Due to it, by this way, that this struggle which is going on in the streets of Tbilisi and other cities of Georgia, it's at the same time not only by this way struggle between the democratic forces, pro-Western forces and pro-Russian forces on behalf of Georgian Dream and their followers, but it's also geopolitical struggle between West and North, by this way. Yes, we can mention. Of course, in this case, for Georgia, it's not acceptable, but this way, yes, Russian influence, because it's Russia, as I told you, that 20% on the 20% of the historic part of Georgia, there are deployed Russian forces.
Yeah, you have been into these protests, and what was the common people of Georgia who participated in these protests? What was their concern regarding this bill? Mean that how what put them that they should come and protest? Mean that the basic reason and behind the mindset behind a common Georgian people?
Yeah, it's important factor that among all the demonstrators prevails the young generation, first of all, students, of course, representative of the different generations, they participate in this at this those protest demonstrations. But prevails a young generation, yes, because this young generation was born in the free, independent Georgia. Yes, okay. There are many people, elder people. Some of them have some nostalgia for you, Soviet Empire, etc., etc. There are some, but it doesn't mean, of course, that a priori that if the person is young, it's pro-Western, and if the person is elder, it's pro-Russian. No, but I mean, prevail majority. There's a young generation there, and they, by this way, perception of the situation is that. In case if we do not fight, if we do not show that we protest, we are against of this law. And it's not only against this law, it's in general, this process is against of the Georgian dream, because according to many protesters, Georgian dream, by this way, which is now corrupted and is becoming more and more authoritarian by this way for Russian. Yes, it's a policy of Georgian dream. It does not play in favor of the national interests of Georgia. And according to opinion of demonstrators, Georgia should go, first of all, towards Europe if Georgia really wants, by this way, to be independent, if Georgia really wants to keep its national identity, it should have the reliable partner like European Union, like United States of America, for example, yes, Western democratic society. Of course, cooperation with other countries, it's also acceptable. We know here, for example, cooperation with China. Yes, China respects the territorial integrity of Georgia and sovereignty of Georgia. There are implemented many projects, okay, by Chinese companies, for example. And it's okay because China, in this case, respects our sovereignty, and it's another case. But no, with regard to Russia, Russia is not a reliable partner. But the pro-Western policy of many people, including mine, does not mean that only we should be oriented on the West. Of course, we should cooperate with different countries in the world, yes, from the West, from the East, I mean, foreign trade relations, yes, from with South, and etc., etc. But yes, with regard to Russia, until Russia is not democratic and until Russia does not respect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Georgia, it's danger. According to many people, understand it, and they say that democracy itself, by this way, should be the main and protect of their own rights and the protection of freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of those organizations which can be the victim of authoritarian regime. Yes, it could be the main guarantee for the further socio-economic or political development of Georgia.
Yeah. So the Georgian president, she has vetoed this bill, but despite the veto power, mean that the parliament has the right to pass this bill? Mean how you see this technical and the constitutional arrangement of this bill?
Yes, according to the Article 73 of the Constitution of Georgia, the president of Georgia has a right to use its right of veto. But after, let's say here, again, Parliament can consider, and by the simple majority, 50% plus one, can by this way, again, yes, overcome this veto of president. Of Georgia, and Parliament did it several days ago. Yes, it did it by 84 parliamentarians supported. Yes, let's say this procedure, and accordingly, within 5 days, according to Constitution of Georgia, now Chairman of Parliament should sign this law, and after this law will enter into force. But with regard to veto of the president explained its veto by the fact that. The document itself, I mean, bill, contradicts with the Constitution of Georgia, particularly with Article 11 related to the equality of the all people, yes, before the law. Because by this bill, yes, we know that those people, I mean, non-governmental organizations, will be under the pressure, yes, and will have the status of foreign agent. Also, it contradicts with Article 15 of the Georgian Constitution. It's related to the private life, because the bill gives some rights to the ruling party to make some, let's say here, observation of the different people from the different organizations, their political views, for example, etc., etc. It's of course violation of the principles of private life, privacy, and also Article 22, according to which, by this way, it's about the right to assembly. Yes, okay, for organize the demonstrations, etc. And Article 78, as I told you before, with your permission, I will repeat again that Article 78, according to which main foreign policy of Georgia, it's EU and NATO membership. But by the adoption of this law, we know here that this law is under the critique of the Western democratic society, and accordingly it can create let's say additional by this way some obstacles on the way of Georgia towards European and Euro-Atlantic institutions.
So let's suppose this parliament passed the bill. So after the election that is going to be on October 26, so the next parliament, mean that the next member parliament, well, they come, so will they have power to revoke this bill?
Yes, I think now, by this way, yes, we are waiting for elections. Of course, in case, by this way, if the power, a new political forces come to the power in Georgia after October 26, of course, a new parliament, by this way, will have, in this case, a right and opportunity, by this way, to change the bill or absolutely abolish this bill. Because according to the Venice Convention, Commission under the Council of Europe, and also OSCE adopted its conclusion, yes, presented its conclusion, according to which this law in general, not some separate articles, but law in general contradicts with principles of democracy and should be abolished. Accordingly, of course, Georgia society is waiting for the elections. If Georgia Dream keeps the power after election, in this case, of course, this law, by this way, will stay and will be enforced. But if new forces come to the power, I think that one of the main and first step of the new elected parliament of Georgia will be abolishment of this law.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nika Chitadze, for joining me in this special discussion on the Georgia Foreign Agent Bill.